Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can.
Hey, Teo, this is a special one. How are you?
Fantastic. No, this is a special one. Clearly.
Hey, first of all, 50th episode. Jeez. Woo fucking who. That's amazing. 50th episode, No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast. Next week is a year anniversary from when we started. So we put out 50 episodes in a year, and I can't believe it. So congratulations to us. If we had one of those Will Slickers buttons with the fake applause, I would be hitting it right now. But we don't. Shout out to Will and Hospitality FM. Also, shout out to Vintori wearing their hat today. So if you're seeing this if you're watching this, we have some interesting background too from Mateo. So you're going to have to check that out. We'll talk about that.
If you're looking on camera.
Yeah, I noticed how you are covering up me.
Oh, hold on.
There
we go.
But we have an amazing guest, which we got to know a little bit in Chicago, because this is our first episode back out of a Chicago VRMA Spring Forum. It was a fantastic show. It was great to see people in person. And, I'm just freaking excited about today. Truly, really am.
Dig in. All
right, so let's go ahead and introduce our guest today. It is Salar Tanzif. Did I murder that?
No, you got that perfectly right, man. That's awesome. Usually people say sailor or something, and I'm like, no, but it's close. But
he is the
That's not close to sailor. Not close to sailor. Yeah.
He's the COO of Guest Ranger. And Gust Ranger, and I'll let him tell his story, and we'll let Salar tell the whole story about Gust Ranger and how he came to the space. But hey, man, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It's your 50th episode. This is awesome. Just before we dive into anything else, I think what you guys are doing is absolutely great. You're providing free content to the industry. And you're bringing a really nice vibe to the industry as well. So I think what you guys are doing is absolutely awesome. And so thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Oh, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it means a lot. Thanks, man. Yeah. Appreciate it. It's, we talk about this so much, but it started as just us. We know it's called No BS because we don't want BS to flow through here, but it started with us just BSing. Bullshitting at a bar, bullshitting at a conference, bullshitting on the trade show floor. Just talking about, the real going ons in the culture and everything behind it, not just, hey, this, if you do this, you're going to get XYZ, which is important. It's really great, but we're trying to bring a different spin to it. And we have some amazing things up for, next year. We'll put out another 50 episodes. I'm pretty excited about where this is going.
And John's going to get an effects machine so he can make
I don't know. That's not really my vibe. Hey, it might be fun every now and then, but get some really terrible ones, like woo, 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 woo. like the slide whistle ones, like the old school back in the 50s and 60s.
Nah, I feel like honestly, we need a button that you hit and it goes, that's bullshit. And then so we can officially be no bullshit. Be like, that's bullshit. Give us a better answer. We're gonna start interrogating our guests a lot.
I actually get that. Those buttons where what was it? It was like a red button. I forgot.
It was what was it?
It was like it was
like from Office Depot. It's like that. Yeah, done.
I think it said that's easy, right? It was like
that the easy button.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's tell us about your story. How did you go ahead, Salar? How did you get into the industry? I'm looking at your LinkedIn resume. You spent almost 3 years as a paid search specialist. You spent a little bit of time as financial advisor, and then you go and you're working SEO and you're doing client success for BizCore, great company, and know the guys well there. Spent a lot of time with them doing at different Streamline summits. But yeah, tell us your journey. Like, how did you go from that all the way to COO of Guest Ranger?
Yeah, man. So it's funny. This is a really interesting industry, man. It's one of the reasons I love this industry is because you can have the most diverse and just random background. I think I was talking with you, John, and you said you were in lumber sales for a little while, and then before you came in here, which is awesome. But so I guess starting from the very, very beginning, before I even had my financial advisor job, I just dabbled in digital marketing here, just did some freelancing. It wasn't necessarily a career, I would say. It was just some freelancing. I just really enjoyed doing it. And then this was, I think, early college. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get a big boy job. So I applied to like a financial advisor. I think I was like 19 at the time or something. I don't know how I got the job, but I became an advisor because at the same building I was working at, there were interns there that were 19. And I had my Series 7, 66. It was insane. And that job really taught me two things experience-wise. One was that if you want to do something, just do it, right? Because on paper, it looks weird that how could this guy who is still in college be advising, at Merrill Edge? But I was like, you know what? Let's just do it. They'll probably say I'm too young. That's fine. Or I gotta finish up my degree. That's fine. And the second thing it taught me was, and this is going to sound really cliche, but I'm sure you guys can relate, is do what you love. Because I hated what I was doing, being a financial advisor. It was cool on paper, but it was, I personally, I just did not like that job at all. And so I decided, I made a decision and said, I want to do something where I actually enjoy, which was digital marketing. But in my head, I never thought I could make a career out of it. So, which is crazy because once I started looking at the time when I started looking at like paid search careers, I was like, oh, this is like a real thing. Like I thought it was just freelancers and they could actually have a salary and a real job on this. And so I applied to, so let me take a back step, because I didn't have any actual work experience. It was harder to get a job in this industry. And so I applied to 300 positions for digital marketer. Yeah, 300. And out of those 310 got back to me. One of them was a company in Chandler called BizCore, and out of those 10. And that's where I met two of the greatest people I know in the industry, Josh Ware and Ken Wilson. And they basically opened the door for me, took me under their wing, showed me how the industry works and what it's all about. And from there, I just progressed to Gust Ranger. But to answer your question in a short answer, I am where I am today because of the people that trusted me, because of the people that put their trust in me, and I'm grateful for that. It's really just the relationships you have and people giving you opportunities. So I can't say, even though I did work hard, it's just the fact that they noticed, and then I just progressed from there. But the story with Gust Ranger is, so while I was at BizCore and while I was kind of understanding the industry, I kind of noticed a few patterns within the industry that were kind of off to me, which is interesting because around the same time, the rest of the Gust Ranger team, before we even met, were noticing the same patterns. And there are three patterns primarily. And the third one, I got to jot this down because I talk everywhere, but the third one I want to really elaborate on. But it was really that our industry is not consolidated and our industry is nomadic. What that means is that it's very easy to move around, right? It's almost the exact opposite of the finance industry. It's consolidated and it's not nomadic in the sense that everything is strict. There's so much friction in the movement, anything you do. But ours is very fluid. And what this showed me was when you have an industry that's very nomadic, that's not consolidated, this is ripe for fraud. This is ripe for unpredictable guests to do bad things. And there was really no process in place at the time to alleviate that problem. And so by the time I met with the people who are now the Gust Ranger team, we kind of got together and huddled up and made what is now the solution to that.
Now, did you, with you, kind of, you're working for BizCore at the time, which is which those that don't know, which you should know, is an Inhabit company. It was part of the Streamline family that broke off, and then Streamline, there's lots of Streamlight had their own web stuff, and then Bizcore had their web stuff, and then they were together. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of, look it up, Inhabit family, and fantastic. But my question for you is, you know, when you were looking for these different, you know, there were, at that time, there were other solutions per se for what you're looking at, but were you looking at you bringing something in-house and doing it on your own, or was that the main drive for it? Or was it that you were looking to, that the other solutions out there didn't fit the bill for what you were, you know, what was in your mind, and the other people that are now part of Guest Ranger, what was in their mind?
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't exactly what we want. So personally, for me, the solution is a variety of things. So one of them is automation. I just want something to do. I just want to do something, and a solution that just does it. I don't want to think about it. I don't have to do it. And so automation was a key factor that the current providers at the time really lacked in. And so I wanted that to be a huge factor, and an ease of use, right? So just being able to use something without having to go through 10 knowledge bases and then 10 days of integration and just churn it on, go like, all right, awesome, it works. But more importantly, John and Matthew, what I want to stress is the job of a property manager, right, is to be a property manager, which is acquire inventory and take care of their guests. They shouldn't have to worry about, you know, is this guy going to commit fraud, or how am I going to verify this guy, or blah, blah, blah. And so that's why those two things that I just mentioned were so important to me, because that was one of the patterns that I noticed, is that these property managers, the reason they're on these PMSs is to be able to delegate their monotonous and tedious tasks to software. So why is it the fact that one of the most important tasks, which is protecting their business, protecting their revenue, not automated? Why is that not emphasized? And so that's pretty much what it came to be.
I mean, super smart. I think that, you know, outside of, you know, when we talk business of a property management company, you know, they're using the software, and, you know, but they're also going ahead and, you know, these are the homeowners. I would think that as a PMS or a PMC that is using a company, you know, a product like yours, would be a great, you know, selling point to homeowners that they're trying to get money with homeowner acquisition. Say, hey, listen, we got this shit covered. You know, we're going to go ahead, you know, you don't have to be a cop. You don't have to be a detective, because the fact that it's automated is pretty special.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And you're a genius for bringing that up, because that you're pretty much psychic. And that's one of the most, you know, important things, is that not only is it protecting the revenue. So let me take a step back and explain like this, right? So any type of revenue protection product, you're on a defensive strategy, as in you're anticipating something bad to happen, and your strategy is defensive. What we were able to do is make this offensive, in a sense that not only are you protecting your business, but like you said, John, you're able to go to homeowners and say, and use it as a marketing tool, an acquisition tool, and say, hey, look, we can protect your assets, right? Because one of the most important things homeowners care about, right next to making money, is making sure that their family vacation home is not going to be rented to some crazy person or some guy that's committing fraud, that's an active criminal. And when you can go up there and say, hey, don't worry, everything's been taken care of. We have a screening process in place. We make sure that they're not committing any type of fraud. That really does alleviate that. And that definitely helps in raising conversion rates to acquire new inventory. It's 100%.
Tell us about, you know, the evolution of Guest Ranger. You know, you've been, I think the first time we saw you was a splash when I bumped into Steve at and Katrina and everyone in San Antonio, and you're setting up the booth there, and then you got the Guest Ranger booth, and then you might have had another booth. I can't remember what it was. You had
maybe.
Like, it seems like you guys are, you know, overall parent company is expanding. Can you tell us about like how Guest Ranger falls into the fold of like parent companies, and where, you know, where you were then, even back in whenever that was, October of, you know, 2021, where you are in this short amount of time and where you're going?
Absolutely, man. That's a great question. So I guess the genesis and the starting point of Gust Ranger was really, and I'm not just talking about the concept, but the actual software. So the testing grounds was being able to access or rather test on the majority or at least half of the Chicago inventory, right? Because Steve plays a vital role in this as well. And based on that, we were able to, and it was not at all what it was today. It was very, very simple. There wasn't even like really a strict UI. And we were able to kind of get a feedback on what worked, what didn't, you know, what's effective in preventing fraud. And then we were able to test usability. And personally for me, I'm not sure about you guys, I'm assuming it's the same way for you because you're in the software industry. Well, vocational software, I guess you could say. But data is so important to me. Being able to know exactly what works and what doesn't objectively and quantify it and know, okay, this works, this does not, it's vital. And so we used that testing period to know exactly what worked and what didn't. From there, we were able to create a base beta test and then grow from there. And everything that we have now is due to consistent user feedback. I emphasize user feedback so much, and I'm sure Hopper does. I'm sure really any other major software company, or at least a software company that's good does, is we make sure that if our users want something, if they think something's important, we take that into serious consideration because, like I said, data matters. And so, kind of go back to what I was saying, we use that as a testing ground. We started integrating with different PMSs. And then at the time in San Antonio, we're pretty new. We had a few clients, few major clients that we were kind of using to grow. And then from that time, which was last year to now, we have, knock on wood, we've skyrocketed. So you know, once you figure out, I guess you call it product market fit. I don't like using tech words around, but that's a good description. You know, you're able to unlock that the demand in the product. And then that's where we are now. And we're constantly open to feedback and we're constantly improving.
Awesome. Tay, were you about to say something?
No, I think it's interesting that they've grown so quickly. And, you know, thinking personally as a manager and the challenges that come up around this space, like, you know, I guess my question is like, what are the things that, you know, during this quick period of time that have surprised you in terms of like guest expectations in this space? Because I think tech has transformed risk protection, right? And what we think of risk protection and revenue protection in these merging worlds. Like I can just think of all the fraud issues that I'm concerned about. I can think of all the issues that we're concerned about. And so like, I guess that's my question to you is like, what are the major concerns that you are addressing? And, you know, what are some of the concerns that you're not addressing, but you're hearing feedback about like, hey, it'd be great if we could be, you know, protected from this space? Yeah,
that's a great question, man. So on the guest side, right, one thing that, and it's very rare, but it's usually with older guests, you know, like maybe in their 70s or 80s, is, you know, they might not feel comfortable going through a process where, and by the way, I think I should emphasize, the way our process works is we use artificial intelligence and facial recognition. And we scan the face using unique geometric pattern recognition. And then we're able to match that to the ID or passport. And we're also able to verify if the passport or ID is legitimate or not based on few key factors. So it's all done through AI. And then some, you know, like I said, some older guests that are kind of averse to technology usually are kind of like, oh, you know, I might not feel comfortable doing this. And this was an early, I guess you could say, issue that was brought up. And so we were able to combat that in two ways. The first way, and this is something, again, that at the time in our industry, the people that were doing this were not, is that we wanted to make sure the guest was comfortable. So we actually created a plugin that our users can add on their website that just takes them to the website. So they don't have to go through any website that says Gust Ranger. You know, if you're booking at, you know, John Manteo's Vacation Rentals, they'll go through John Manteo's Vacation Rentals. So as the first step is branding and familiarity with the brand you're already booking with, right? And the second step was a frictionless verification process. And this is why I love the question that you asked, Mateo, because when it comes to fraud prevention, and there's different types of friction you can apply, right? So by friction, I mean the steps it takes from getting to point A to point C, right? And so the facial recognition is the most effective strategy, but it's also not necessarily the most friction-based, but the most the highest friction rate, I guess you could say, because you're asking someone to take a picture of your ID face. We are able to apply different methods of verification that do not ask for that. So for example, we're able to match the person's address with their name, or we're able to identify how old the email was, and we're able to identify if the IP was blacklisted, along with a few other different things that create a cohesive, holistic picture of, should you look into this guy or should you not? Another key issue is reservation creation date from check-in, right? So if the reservation was made a day before check-in and it's a local guest, exactly, doesn't necessarily mean it's risky, but if you take into factor other attributes,
some you definitely
that does raise a red flag.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of things. I mean, it's, when I came into space, I worked for, payment processing, and, that was, and this is 5 years ago, and things have changed, tremendously. 6 years ago, this changed tremendously since then, where, hey, it was a no back then. And now it's become more of a norm, these last minute bookings. But, I remember when I was working and in that space, something would, come in through like one of the major OTAs that isn't Hopper, because Hopper wasn't around then in vacation rental space. They were basically would allow anything to fly. As far as credit card, and there's tons of fraud. And then some of the other ones were more stringent and would actually go ahead, and there was different, you talked about, address, and there's different things that you'd have to go ahead and, was it just the city, or was it the actual, city and state with the zip, or was it like when they asked for full address, that was horrible, because anytime you type street ST, or you actually type street out, it would be different and it wouldn't work. Yeah. So there's different ways you had to go ahead and set it up. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And it's a pain in the ass dealing with that. And then and coaching property managers on how they should go ahead and accept credit cards. You could set them up different ways. So great answers, great questions. We mentioned there's others in the space that are doing, that are on a similar trajectory as in offering, services like this for property managers and for homeowners. How are you better? And where could you get better compared to these other companies? Because some of them, are well known, and there's some loyalty there. And, and they're doing great things as well. And, I'm sure we'll have them on the podcast in the future. So, where do you think you're excelling, and where could you grow?
Yeah, man, I got it right to the next. I want to really touch on an important point. But so to answer that question, so yeah, man, there are a lot of people, or rather a few different, I guess you'd call it competitors in the industry. I don't really look at them as competitors. They're in the same umbrella as us, which is preventing loss of revenue, which is great, right? And so there are certain similarities, but the main difference that I would say, and like I said before, is two things. One is being able to automate this process fully, so that there is, again, I don't like bad-mouthing competitors, but there is one company that comes to mind, and what they're doing is great, right? But their onboarding process and their process as a whole is very, there's a lot of friction, but to the client. Yeah, exactly. Laborious, tedious, and they have to do so much different things to just be able to verify one person. Where, like I said before, my whole idea was, hey, the property manager should just be able to turn this on, step back, and if something bad happens, be notified, right? If this guy might be shady, just be notified. You don't have to go through this every single day on top of what you're already doing, which is making sure your owners are happy, your guests are happy. Just focus on what you do. Let us do what we do. And then the second thing is comfortability. So Matthew, going back to what you said, is what problems do you or what issues might guests have, is being able to make sure the guest is comfortable with going through the process. And a lot of their verification methods are heavily friction based. And on top of that, they have a very strict portal in terms of usability of the guest, which causes even more friction on top of that. So to kind of answer your question there, John, two main differentiators, which is comfortability and automation.
Okay. What? Sorry.
Yeah. No, again, I mean, you think about the roadblocks and timing, right? And don't know who you're talking about, but I think that just applies to tech in our space in general, right? As well. And, the more I think laborious it is up front, the more you're going to lose people, the more you're on both sides of that coin, right? Because as a property manager, I don't want to take on a whole heap of other things, especially if there's, again, we talk about technology being the great equalizer. If there's something that takes 2 steps that I can do over here versus something that takes 25, and the result is the same, the protection's the same. And I think that has to become more of the, the mindset, right? Of, and when John hears me say this all the time, as a property manager, theory versus application is very, very different, right? And coming from the vendor side and the tech side of the business, those are just words until you live it. And when you really understand the essence of both sides, right? What the property managers have to deal with, within their tech stacks, and, what things that turn the guests away, how do you continue to get the important information that allows you to execute without, being overly intrusive? And there's a bit of a generational shift.
UX and UI.
Well, there's also a bit, he mentioned it earlier, it's a bit of a generational shift. In, like, John, you and I know, like, we're not as just like, oh yeah, here, take our information, not a problem. Here, you want me to fill this out 18 times, last 4 of my social? Like, we're like, why do you want this shit? Like, and personally, and this is me personally, like, and again, they want your biometric data, they're going to get it at the airport, cameras everywhere.
They already have all our shit anyway.
Right? Yeah. It's just like, I think you get people like me that are like, fuck that, I'm not going to make it that easy for them to get it. If you want to see my face, you got to look under my hat. No, but seriously, like, there's, that's a generational thing that I think people are, at the end of the day, they're looking for the ease. They're looking for the efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that you said, I'm just going to emphasize really quick, is you said getting important information. So not just the result of facial recognition, but the source of the data. So a lot of these other companies, their data source is subpar because they're using public data. They're using, there's a database, I think it was like, where you can just Google people and then it just shows your data. It's scraped data that is not accurate, really, or at least 10 years old and not updated. We made sure that our database is up, everything is accurate. So for example, we're using TransUnion, and on top of that, MasterCard database to make sure that everything is good to go. And one other thing too is, so background checks a huge factor, right? Being in compliance with different regulations, which is something I really want to stress and talk about in a few moments here. But you have to do it right, because if you do it wrong, if you do a background check wrong outside the circle of legality, you're going to be, it's a liability, right? And here's why it's interesting, right? Yeah, here's why it's interesting, because when we were making this, I had no idea people were doing this. So if your name is John Smith, right, and you live in 123 Apple Street, and you booked a stay with, let's say, Salars Vacation Rentals, and I did a background check on you, and something popped up that said, oh, this guy is a red flag because of X, Y, Z. But there was another John Smith that lives on 123 Apple Street, has the same name and address, and it popped up, right? That guy can sue me because he's basically, it's a false positive. And what's crazy is there are people that do this as a career. They'll partner with law firms. They'll go because they know their name is on a database that is not actually what they did, and they'll go and they'll try to get background checks, right? And then they'll get failed on purpose, and then they'll bring up a lawsuit. So it's very important how you go about this.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
That's crazy.
That's insane. Hey, I want to make sure that we get in and chat about, do a little recap of VRMA. But before we go ahead and do that, is there anything that you wanted to bring attention to, Guest Ranger, that we haven't gone ahead and touched on?
That's about it, man. One last thing is I personally think, and this isn't even really just about Gust Ranger, it's really about the usability of software. When I was a kid, I'd watch the Terminator and all these futuristic movies where people can scan their face and then like a door would open or whatever. And now we have this technology in our hands, and it's like, that's insane. Like, we're using facial recognition. The words, it's so common now, it's diluted, right? The value is diluted. But if you think about how crazy that is, that we're using artificial intelligence and facial recognition to be able to identify if a person is going to commit fraud or not, which is, that's insane to me. But one thing I didn't want to touch after we talk about VRMA is regulations and compliance. And I think that's outside the umbrella of Gust Ranger too, that I would love to bring attention to.
Well, we're in the fight right here in Atlanta, so we're in the midst.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want to talk about with our,
Yeah. So when we started talking about Gust Ranger, I said there's the third pattern that I noticed that kind of I'm saving for now because it's a huge passion of mine, and I think it's a huge issue. So personally, one of the main reasons for me, one of the main reasons of making Gust Ranger is to fight against regulations, right? And this is why. And there are currently a lot of people facing them. I just want to give a shout out to, if you're in Big Bear is having some type of ballots coming up. Oregon's having some type of ballots coming up. Vermont's having some type of ballots coming up. The Vocational Short-Term Rental Alliance, I think it's June 2nd or 3rd. If you guys have time, please go visit. If they hit a threshold 150 attendees, the governor might come out. They're dealing with regulations. It's a huge issue, man, because if we're not preemptive about it, if we don't have a process in place to combat it, there is no Gust Ranger, there is no Hopper, there are no competitors of ours, right? The industry is gone, right? So we need to make sure as a collective we're coming together and building out strategies and helping each other, whether we are competitors or not, to fight against these regulations. And please correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but it seems like there are two sources of these regulations: are hotel lobbyists and noisy neighbors. And we as an industry, one of the things we can do is make sure we have a process in place where we're not just booking crazy people, because that leaves a bad reputation on our industry that they're already using to tarnish our image. So if you're booking a guest that is going to destroy your house, or it might be an active criminal committing fraud, whatever the case is, and that gets, someone gets called in, a cop gets called in, and that gets on local news, or even that gets brought up at city council, that's adding more wood to the fire, right? And so 100%, to me, 100%. Yeah.
I mean,
you got to add Scott the third leg to that too. There's a third influence, and that's ignorant politicians. And I mean ignorant is like they're dumb. They're just ignorant to the fact of what short-term rentals are. They don't know the difference between a host on Airbnb and a professional manager. These are the things that we're dealing with in Atlanta right now, that are valid, as we're fighting through this ordinance, and being a part of it from the beginning to the end, to where we are today. There's so many different influences, even within our own industry, that are pushing their own interest versus the interest of the greater good of STR, which, again, I don't understand it, but that's what's happening. I won't name names, but that's something that, that's why VRMA is important. That's why rent responsibly is important. That's why all these other, that's why we as an industry together are important. But you're right, we don't have that unified voice. We don't have that, we're building.
We're getting there. I can look in the positives of this. We had Scott on with Inhabit, and we had him on, a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, I guess now. And the biggest thing and that he said that really resonated with me, and I think it's super important, on top of, how can you go ahead and put all these, protections in place as a, property manager, or as a homeowner, or however you want to do it, is get involved with your community early. If you're a property management company, if you're, start to know your local politicians, go to town hall meetings, understand what's going on, be a advocate for the industry, but also be a friend of the community. Because then when they start looking at you and asking as a resource, if they have questions and they're looking to you as a resource, explain this to me, let yourself known. Don't be such an, we're talking advocacy here, right? But don't be an adversary to what's going, to the system. Now, we all know that the system is bullshit, right? And we know it, and this is the No Bullshit podcast, right? It's bullshit system, but how do you go ahead and make that better? Is get involved early. Like your community might not have issues right now, but it will. Something fucked up will happen, and somebody
changes, somebody has a bad experience.
And we all know how bad news travels through the media, and with social, it's instantaneous, and it never used to be like that. And obviously the scale and breadth of what we're doing as an industry is so much bigger, and it's so much more expansive than it ever was in the past, and it's super important. Great point to bring up.
And dude, you hit the nail right in the head, John. If it's on issue now, it's probably going to be. And so establish yourself as a friend of the industry and have a good reputation in terms of making our industry look good. But really join some type of alliance. If there isn't one, make one. So you have the support of the local constituents, you have the support of local businesses, because our industry is bringing tourism to half of these places, right? Yeah. Big Bear, for example, without short-term rentals, there really isn't that much business there, right?
Yeah, they don't realize how they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
And to be honest, how to separate the issues, right? Like if housing is an issue in Big Bear, it's a vacation rental destination. Instead of, how can we cut out what we think is wrong? We have to get to more collaborative solutions. Like how can we work together, right? How can we make this work? And
absolutely, man.
Unfortunately, I think that has to come from us. We have to be the creatives on this side because we're coming with the negative tint on us, right? And which brings up a question, actually. So do you work with hosts or do you work with professionals only?
So it's primarily professionals only. Mm-hmm. Because hosts, for example, if you have 1 or 3 units, you're not really dealing with the amount of volume. Maybe you might be, but at the time where you need automation, if that makes sense, right? So we primarily deal with property manager and management companies. Mm-hmm. We are looking to see how our solution can be fit for maybe a 1 to 3 bedroom unit, but to answer your questions, primarily property managers. And just sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because it goes into what we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Who are the, and I hate to say bad actors, but who are the bad actors in our space? You saw what happened this weekend in Philadelphia. I'm not in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh with, and first thing is, I'm watching ABC News, last night on the weekend report, and it's shooting at an Airbnb. Airbnb is doing this. Airbnb is, again, so it's like we're having this conversation. I'd be interested to know. I'm pretty sure that wasn't a professionally managed house, right? It was a house party with 200 people. Professionals have the tools in place to make sure that this doesn't happen, right? So we should be the guidelines. And those who are in this industry and are running these businesses should have those tools to operate, right? So I think it's something that we definitely need to be thinking of and be more inclusive of, because it really is, whether we like it or not, it makes us a part of the narrative. It makes us a part of, this conversation that we're not even, having a voice in, because they're going directly to Airbnb. It was on Airbnb. It was an Airbnb. And now we're sitting up here continually talking about party houses. So,
absolutely, man, 100%. And going back with what you said with Scott, what he said, what they're doing with the right to rent program is awesome. If you guys don't know, you're able to. I think it depends on what PMS you're working with. But you're able to donate maybe $1 or $3 per booking and give it to the fund that's established to fight against regulations. One question I asked you, Mattia, because I want to bring the spotlight on you and what's going on in Atlanta. What can we do as an industry, vendors or property managers, whoever listening to this, to help out with the ordinances in Atlanta right now? What can we do?
Just support the local alliance. We've been working with Scott, VRMA, Rent Responsibly have all given resources. Shout out to Vicasa. Vicasa actually was supporting us in terms of helping our legal fund, and VRMA has been giving us resources as well. So, I think we just need a united front from the industry. And, again, of course, while we're working this out, we need financial support. We need any other resources. We need, experiences, all of these things, because this is a relatively new alliance. Like you were standing there at Darm, John, when Scott was like, I need you to help this thing out in Atlanta. And so, early. This was last August. And, understanding that Atlanta went from no ordinances at all to facing a ban to a really bad ordinance. That was really it's really going to have a negative effect on.
Is that on ballot currently, or is it already?
So it's been on ballot. It's been delayed. So we just had a city council meeting yesterday. They voted to delay enforcement. I think they're going to be putting together a committee, which AMSTRA, which is the Atlanta Metro Short-Term Rental Alliance, is looking to be a participant in that. making, again, you have to make sure that we can't let others tell our story anymore, right? We can't, within our industry, outside of our industry, we have to come in with a strong narrative and let people know we're the professionals, we're the neighbors, we care.
Right.
And what do they say? TLC, tax paying, I got what the L was, and compliant, right? Like those are all of the things that we are. Local, it's taxpayer, local, and compliant. Those are the things that we are, and we should be the model, not the ones that are being shunned and banned. We're creating jobs, right? We do it the right way. We care about our neighbors. We listen to input. We are the professionals in the space whose voices just aren't being told. So. So I would say long answer to a short question is get involved with the local.
Are there any local alliances in Atlanta that we can reach out to?
No, AmStra. No, I'll send you that. The one I was just telling you about is I'll send you the information for AmStra.
Okay. Awesome. Perfect.
Awesome, man. So to totally sidetrack off of that, you said TLC and my mind went to TLC, the group, and then it went to
it is Atlanta. That's a fair.
That's I'm like, Atlanta. It's definitely. But then it went to PYT, right? Pretty young thing. And I started thinking Michael Jackson. Yeah. And then I'm just sitting here. I'm like, man, I should be focusing on like the really important shit we're talking about. But I'm thinking,
listening to Michael Jackson singing and dancing in his head. That's pretty incredible.
I was getting down in my head. Speaking of getting down, let's do a little brief recap of VRMA. It was awesome. It was awesome to meet you in person. I think we've met before. Discord team, but it's been a little while. So I mean, I thought it was great. I think that like always, there are things that can be improved upon. And we'll talk about that, like, so, some DEI stuff that Mateo and I did with our great friends that could be improved upon and we can talk about that in the future. But let's talk about the amazing things that happened and like I just felt that the vibe was, it continued from San Antonio, which was an amazing vibe. I was worried when Chicago early, a few months back, where like Chicago went way back to like mask mandates again. I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be like, are we going to button this down again? Did we choose again the wrong city? But no, it opened up. It was amazing. And the last minute attendees compared to where, like, I think it was over 800 attendees for a spring forum. It was bigger than Charlotte. The last time we had Spring Forum by far, by like over 200 people.
Hats off to Chicago. It's a city of it's a beautiful city. It was a great pick. I thought the hotel was a good fit. It was, we're in hospitality, and it beckoned an age of, when hospitality was front and center in our lives, right? Everything happened at these places. So, and look how far we've come. Different world.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts, Salar? I mean, for Chicago as a venue and this, just the together, maybe not necessarily Chicago, but just, what do you feel the vibe was at the show?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So two things with that. One, the hotel was awesome, but I think I was telling Mateo before this, every time I went in the hotel, I thought I was going to die. The elevator, I thought I was going to die because it was shaky. I'm like, is this like my last time in an elevator? But seriously, they filmed like a bunch of movies there, which is awesome. But so the hotel was awesome. But the second thing was the vibe was great, but more importantly, I think VRMA raised $400,000 for the regulatory fund, which is beautiful.
Yes.
So the turnout was solid. The weather they can't have no control over, but Chicago. I used to live in Chicago like a while ago, and the outskirts called Skokie, and I'm used to the weather, but just going back every now and then, coming from Arizona, it's always like, oh my God, how do people live here?
We actually, Teo and I and a bunch of people, we sat in the bleachers at the Cubbies game that first day.
Oh, really?
It was so much, like, a sunburn.
It was nice. It was hot, and I had to take my coat and layers, like, unlayered.
The sun opened up. We're like, oh,
it was dope. But and no snow. I mean, we literally missed snow by a day, like we were talking about. So it snowed the day before we got there, and then it was like warm ever since.
It's funny because every time I visit Chicago, my flight's always delayed. doesn't matter when. And then the day I was leaving, I don't know if you guys got this too. There's a text message that said, "Hey, you might want to cancel your flight." And then I'm like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" So I had to like change it around, but it was awesome though.
Oh yeah, no, we flew through that storm. Shout out to Delta, because like we were on the ground and the wind was blowing, like the plane was rocking, and we hadn't even left the ground yet. I was like, oh, they're gonna. Everyone's flights were getting pushed back or canceled, and I was like, oh, Atlanta's on time departure, and we sure did.
A 45-minute flight home to Fort Wayne.
Should have walked.
I should have driven.
Yeah, but John, I met some of your team. Gosh, I'm so sorry for messing up. I think his name is Danny. Dan.
Yeah.
He's a good tall guy.
Danny. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a cool Danny guy. And then he told me some more information about Hopper, and I think what you guys are doing is awesome. Yeah, man, it's a really cool product. Yeah,
thanks. We're pretty excited about where it's going, and it was a great for Hopper. It was an amazing show. It was a We're Here show. We were able to go ahead and throw a great party with our friends at Lynx and Price Labs and StayFi. So that was fun. I mean, truly, we had over 200 people in attendance. I think there was 250 at one time. So it was a big party. And so we had a lot of fun there. And it was just, I mean, the night before, whoever was at the same venue, actually, I guess Buddy Guy came out and played. So that was awesome. But it was fun. And I learned a lot in just, I'm excited to hit the road and as of when we're recording now, any flights, at least for temporarily that we're on now, there's no more masks. Masks are done as a yesterday.
Really?
On flights. Awesome. Your choice now.
There you go. Your choice.
So
about y'all, man.
Yeah, I might still be wearing it.
Yeah,
probably not.
For a little
probably
while.
not. I'm so sick of it.
I mean, shit.
I'll tell you what,
Mm-hmm.
though. The good thing about masks on planes, outside of just COVID and everything else, is just being able to not breathe in the recycled air of people within a condensed space. You know what I mean? Just because they might not be showering, and they might be just very disgusting people, and then the air in an airplane is just it's not really it's kind of recycled in the sense of just it's in a very condensed area. So not being able to breathe that in, it's pretty neat. But
we use better air purifying technology on airplanes, which I'm sure that's coming. It's got.
Well, I think from my understanding, like what they like the air quality on airplanes and like the process that they have is like way better than like going to sitting in a restaurant and stuff like that. Like, I guess like, yeah, from early research on, I guess it's like as weird as it is, like the stuff and filters and stuff they're pushing through, it's like the air around you is cleaner on an airplane unless you're getting like sitting right next to someone that's coughing in your face. This absolutely, you're like, you're in a much better place there, and you're not like touching everything. I think that's the big part is like, so I don't know, whatever the case.
Yeah. We just got to stop acting like someone telling you to wear a mask is restrictive to your, I mean, I get it. Like nobody likes to be told what to do, but it's not like we're binding you to somebody else. And we have to talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
We're going down a path here.
Yeah. So help me.
Whatever the case, thanks so much for joining us today. It was super great having you on. It was awesome learning about Guest Ranger. Excited to see where you guys are going. Couple things I want to go ahead and put out there. If you are liking this podcast, please go ahead and go to iTunes, go to Apple Podcasts, and leave a review. See if you're looking on, if you could see Mateo's hat right now, we're going to go ahead and give one of those hats away to a review that happens, that we get in within the next month. So we're going to go ahead. We're doing a review push. And we're going to randomly pick, two reviews. So if you're liking what you're hearing, you want one of these dope hats, we didn't skimp on them. These are new era. These are nice caps. We'll send them your way for new reviews that are coming in. So please leave a review. And hey, thanks for joining us on this 50th episode.
Yeah, shout out to John. Oh, shout out to Will. Got the mic, brother. Shout out to Sure.
I was gonna say you sound like really crisp. You sound nice, man.
Thank you. They've been beating me up, man, because my microphone before sucks.
Thanks for having me, guys, on on your 50th episode. Like I was saying, you guys before, I think what you guys are doing is absolutely awesome. You guys are two of the coolest people I know in the industry. So it's really awesome being on your show. And just one last shout out, just one last thing I want to tell people, please get involved in your local alliances for regulations. Please, extremely important, because if you're not dealing with something now, it's most likely going to happen. So you got to be preemptive about it.
No doubt.